we got it back, and they're like, everything is awesome except for that. And I'm like, okay, well.
Good to have a good friend in the studio with us, Barry Kern, President and CEO of Mardi Gras World and Kern Studios.
I'm just a CEO now. Fitz is my son.
Fitz is the president.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have him on the show.
Well,
But stay for now, please.
Yes.
Thank you. That's great. Fitz is a great guy. We'll get around to your two boys in just a moment. But hey, let's start with you. You grew up around Mardi Gras. What was it like? I mean, as a child, your father, Mr. Mardi Gras, always around the house. Were you in the studios from the very beginning?
Oh yeah. It was, well, first of all, growing up with my father was, I mean, when people say they lived a charmed life, I mean, I think I've seen and experienced more things than most people will ever get to do. I mean, we'll blame my father was, he was who he was, and for those people that know him, but he was had an incredible imagination and was a lot of fun. All the kids in the neighborhood would want to hang out with Blaine.
Yeah.
And on Saturdays, he had a station wagon that he would drive, and all the kids in the neighborhood would jump in the station wagon. We'd all go down to the Aladdin, which was right on the river in Algiers, where the old Mardi Gras World was. And everybody was there, and he would teach the old, some of the kids were older. He'd teach those boys how to drive, and we'd be on the levees, and we'd be in the dens, and you'd be hiding on floats, and you'd be, helping out when time came to help out and do things. I mean, and then Blaine was always had me traveling with him because he loved to travel. It was something that Darwin Finner did with him.
That's right. It just talks about the industry that you're in, but when someone who is just meeting you asks you, what do you do for a living? How do you describe that?
Well, and look, there's other people that, I mean, I guess a lot of times I get identified as a float builder.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously our business now is a lot more than just building floats. But, Mardi Gras in New Orleans is certainly our most important business, and has, I think our business has benefited and Mardi Gras has benefited as we've grown our business. But yeah, I think most people would refer to me as a float builder.
I think designer of dreams in many ways too.
Well, we've certainly, I mean, I've seen it change so much.
Yeah.
And just in my lifetime, it's crazy. And I remember my father, maybe a couple of years before he died, he basically telling my son Fitz, son, you're not going to believe the things that you're going to do in your life.
That's amazing to be told that by your grandfather, and he's living it right now. So it's not about just inheriting a tradition, which you did from your dad, but it's a major responsibility to
yeah,
maintain.
I kind of think, I feel like our business, because of where we are in the business and here in New Orleans, and obviously, there's the float building aspect, Kern Studios, there's Mardi Gras World, where we have literally events daily, people coming from the convention center, big groups that are coming in there. We've got tourists every day. And now we're basically exporting it. Universal Studios, one of the oldest and top events that they have is literally their Mardi Gras event that starts on February 7th this year and goes into April. And they literally turn their whole theme park into New Orleans. They build a French Quarter. Everything's purple, green, and gold. There's parades every night. They do concerts on the weekend. They're literally copying what we do. And I can't help but think that everybody that goes and sees that wants to come see the real thing, right? And there's every theme park, in the major theme park in the country has our parades, and around the world. And there's a lot of people doing these Mardi Gras events. Everyone is copying and wants to be New Orleans, right?
That's amazing. If you think about the branding, the gift that is given to the city of New Orleans by work that you do worldwide.
Yeah, and I mean, and if you think about how it all came to, for me, the amazing part is just thinking of the history and just looking at the way the business has grown. Mardi Gras today is twice as big as it was pre-Katrina. Name me one other thing in New Orleans that's twice as big as it was before Katrina. Mardi Gras continues to grow at a pace that's really remarkable. And it's the one thing that we do better and we do well is putting on these events. And obviously Mardi Gras is one of them, but we're involved with so many things now. The Sugar Bowl Parade, the Manning Children's Hospital Christmas Parade that we're doing. My brother with, Crew of Boo and the Halloween Parade. We've got, probably a dozen St. Patrick's Day parades, St. Joseph. There's all these events and then all these festivals and all the things that we do here in New Orleans that make it the special place that it is. And to think that, in my mind, I always love to talk about the history with Rex and Darwin Finner and his foresight to basically see what Mardi Gras could be and basically taking a young Blaine Kern who was in his early 20s and basically mentoring him and basically getting him and encouraging him to grow Mardi Gras and to basically democratize it.
Your dad taught you a lot about Mardi Gras, but what are the things that have remained with you that guide your decisions?
He was certainly a great, interesting father. And I've got 2 brothers and 2 sisters. We all grew up, and he really encouraged both of my brothers and my sisters, everybody to kind of go out and do something. And frankly, I remember the World's Fair was coming to New Orleans in 1983 or 84, and that was a big deal, right? And if you remember, he was involved with Augie Perez, and they were building the gondola across the river. Think about the mind that comes up with this idea to build a gondola. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because it was basically green. The idea of it was, he loved the idea that a 75 horsepower electric motor could move 3,500 people round trip. And he was just ahead of his time. If that thing was there today as a transportation, it would still be operating.
Yeah.
And but really it was that kind of a mindset. But for the World's Fair, we had so much work to do. Mardi Gras World was being built on the West Bank. We had Mardi Gras World at the World's Fair that was opening. We had the Wonderwall to do, the Bridge Gate to do, the Louisiana Journey, which was Hall A of the Convention Center.
That's right.
That
was the first real use of the Convention Center.
Right, first real use of the Convention Center. My brother Blaine was working on that. There was a dark ride that we did in there for that. My job was to do the Wonderwall and these giant alligators and the domes and cupolas and all those cherubs you still see around town. And so my dad, we didn't have the capacity to do Mardi Gras, to do a parade at the World's Fair, and to open up all the things we had to do. My dad, who had been bringing me since I was a child to Europe to meet with and to be, he was friends with all these artists and artisans in Europe that did the European carnivals. And he said, son, you need to go to Spain to build this stuff. We just don't have the capacity here in New Orleans. And I went to Spain in Valencia, Spain, where these guys were basically really the best artists in papier-mâché on earth. Nobody better. They have a thing called Las Fallas, a big celebration they do there. And they build these giant statues, like our floats, but they burn them on the eve of St. Joseph's Day. Mm. And St. Joseph is the patron saint of carpenters. And so these guys started taking little pieces of wood and creating these cool little effigies and things, and then it turned into, and literally today you can go there and they'll have a paper mache. It'll be like the Concorde jet, and you could be 10 feet away from it and you can't tell it's not a real Concorde jet. So I went over there and I got in that village with these different artists that I'd known since I was 6 or 7 years old, and we put a team together and we started working in fiberglass, and we built all the stuff for the Wonderwall. And that was really amazing because that was when I got back to New Orleans, the World's Fair was successful. I remember it was 1987 and they were opening up Splash Mountain. But they wanted to do, the guy who ran entertainment at Disney was good friends with Blaine. And of course, because Blaine had been offered a job from Disney as a young man, and he stayed friends with these guys. But they wanted to do a big Mardi Gras party for the opening of Splash Mountain. And I go out there for 2 weeks, and it's a Mardi Gras event in the Disneyland Hotel, and I'm spending all this time with the guy who runs entertainment, and I'm telling him about everything I had just been doing in Spain, And do you know that was in 1987 when that event happened? And right after that, he calls me up. He goes, Barry, you know, you've been spending all that time in Spain with all these guys. He says, you know, we're building a theme park in Paris. Would you fly to Paris and go meet our people? We don't have the capacity to do everything that needs to get done. Because they were in Hong Kong,
right.
Not Hong Kong, but they were in Tokyo. They didn't have the capacity, and they knew that we had the capacity, and I had the capacity, and so I ended up flying to Paris and meeting the Disney people there, and they wanted me to build all of the theming for every retail store, every restaurant, all the directional signage in the whole theme park, and they wanted it to integrate with the Disney characters that they would build in Tahunga, California, where they made all the Disney characters. Well, if you can remember, this is 1989, 1990. There was no such thing as a digital, you know, we had phones, but it was a flip phone. If you remember, there was still a fax. Computers had just started,
right.
So you couldn't send a digital image, and they wanted me to interface props of, say, a Mickey Mouse that would be flying an airplane that I was building. And I'm like, guys, you have to let me build the props, the actual Disney IP. And they're like, well, nobody gets to build the Disney IP. So I said, look, we have really, really good artists here. I said, and I'd just done a Jiminy Cricket for Mardi Gras. And I took this Jiminy Cricket head, and I flew to Paris with the Jiminy Cricket, and the head of Jiminy Cricket, and I showed the guys, like, that's pretty good. Well, let's try it. And so the first prop that I did was a Goofy playing baseball. And I didn't know that Goofy was amorphous, right? You know, he has no sex. That basically none of the Disney characters have it's really, I mean, you might think they're men or women, but
right.
You don't really know. And of course, the first Goofy we did was awesome, but he had a little bit of, you know, you could see that he was a man in his pants, right? And so literally, we got it back, and they're like, everything is awesome except for that. And I'm like, okay, well, which was an easy, you know, it's in clay, so we were easily, but once we did that, we were the first company ever allowed to do the Disney characters, which opened up a whole new world for me and a whole new business that I pursued for a long time before I went back to work with Blaine.
It's amazing, too, because it does connect Disney to New Orleans once again, because
he was always
no other
here.
City is
I mean,
celebrated like
that's
we
a whole
are.
story. And look, we should probably do the Barry Kern, the 3 or 4 hour podcast if we want to get into every story. But the story of Blaine with Walt Disney and how he was here in New Orleans often. Love New Orleans. You know, New Orleans is the only city represented in every Disney theme park on earth. And it's the only city. There is no other city.
Right.
The main street is the main street that he grew up on, but there's no name to it. There's a New Orleans square in every Disney theme park on earth. New Orleans is an amazing, amazing place.
Yeah.
And to think the guy who would become the biggest name in the history of entertainment, you know, he loved New Orleans. And I love the city.
Yeah, let's come back to New Orleans just for a moment. I want to talk about floats. Is there a float on a route right now that still gives you chills? When you see that float, does it say, yeah?
Well, so you know, again, a lot of people ask me, what is your favorite parade? Which, you know,
It's like asking for your favorite restaurant.
Right, well, it's not even that. It's like asking for your favorite restaurant when you're the chef in every one, right? And then you got to answer to the Arnauds, the Brennans, you know, Antoine's. You have to answer to everybody. And listen, I mean, we're so lucky that we have, and every parade has its own personality. And you know, I think that's the thing for me to see growing up and to watch what ended up happening with you know, Bacchus, the birth of Bacchus, and what it did for New Orleans, and really at a time when New Orleans was dying. I mean, you know, the way basically you had half the hotel rooms in the city, and you had 5,000 or 6,000 hotel rooms with about 40% occupancy. And Pip and Dick Brennan came up with this idea. They wanted to have a parade on Sunday night. And the reason why it was Sunday was because they knew if people spent Sunday night, you'd wake up Monday in New Orleans. If you wake up Monday in New Orleans, then you're going to spend the night Monday night because you're going to stay for Tuesday, right? Mardi Gras Day. But a lot of people would come to town on Thursday or Friday, and they'd leave on Sunday. And they built a super crew, the first super crew. They built floats that were twice as big as anybody had ever seen. And then, of course, you know, the story of Ed Muniz and Blaine. Ed used to always love him.
Ed Muniz, the captain of Endymion.
Captain of Endymion. He was an unbelievable guy that was in the radio business. I mean, I grew up with him.
True entrepreneur.
Oh, incredible entrepreneur, great imagination. And Blaine brought him to to the Bacchus rendezvous in the Rivergate the year that Bob Hope was king. And those floats rolled in there with the Bob Hope and a full orchestra and 5,000 people in evening gowns and black tie. And, and Blaine was able to work with the Brennans and Bacchus to allow Endymion to come in the night before and use a lot of the same setup, the stage and a lot of the things. And of course that changed everything, because then Endymion ended up growing and going into the Superdome. And then of course on his 25th birthday, Harry Connick Jr. is the 25th Bacchus as a 25-year-old. And he comes and he loves being the king of Bacchus, but also, and he goes into the Bacchus dressing room with all of his buddies that were, all these musicians. And it was frankly, the crew was Bacchus was an incredible organization, but he said, man, this would be great if I had my own parade. And he ended up, coming with Orpheus the next year. And within 2 years, he comes with Orpheus. And Orpheus, and you asked the original question, which I'm really always can go off on a tangent here. So you always have to bring me back, Mark, if you didn't notice. And I'm lucky that I'm actually identifying where we started this. Is that you asked what float gives me chills. There's a float that I think changed. Well, you can look at it. The Bacchagator.
Right.
Which is
still in the parade.
Which is still in the parade. We took the Bacchagator, which was one of the giant alligators I made for the Wonderwall.
Well, I didn't know
for the
that.
World's Fair. Yeah, and if you remember what happened was we didn't get paid by the World's Fair, so we took all that stuff back. So you can still see props from the World's Fair, domes and cherubs and particularly busts that were
on
all
various
over,
floats around.
On various floats around Mardi Gras. But so the first multi-section float was the Bacchagator, and then for the Bacchagator, you had the Leviathan, and the Leviathan was the first float that had fiber optic, and that's an interesting story in itself. I won't get into it, but I'll just say that we had a benefactor in the organization who was a wealthy guy in the oil and gas business, and he wanted to build something for his wife, who was originally from New Orleans, and we literally built a float that kind of changed, in my mind, it changed, and it's still one of the prettiest floats in Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
Because it's incredibly dramatic as it comes down the street. The special effects are great. But that float was kind of like, if I could ever describe an arms race between Endymion, Bacchus, and Orpheus over who was going to build the best floats, it literally got everybody interested. And that's the great thing about Mardi Gras is the better that we do, and we learned all these great things working for Disney, working for Universal, working out in Las Vegas. I learned all these different techniques that I brought into the floats. And as we did that, a guy like Ed Muniz was he was not going to be outdone, right? Yeah. And of course, Bacchus didn't want to be outdone. And so every year, Bacchus has a new float this year that's incredible. Endymion added an incredible float last year. Orpheus added an incredible float 2 years ago. That's the great thing about Mardi Gras in New Orleans and the parades that we do is that the more that it stays the same, it's the history, it's the way that we celebrate it, the more that we do, the better that it comes.
Yeah, and the competition is healthy and it raises the bar for everybody. Yeah. You're working with your two sons. What is that like?
Oh, it's great.
Fitz and Patrick.
Yeah. So Fitz has been there almost, I guess, 10 years now. And
now president.
Yeah, and now president. And I will say that the good news is I think he's a much better version of a Blaine and a Barry. He's certainly a better manager. And so that's the good news is that we're already working on sketches for 2028 right now.
Fantastic.
We basically have sculptors working on 2027 props. And of course we're still finishing floats and things for this year because you're always working.
Yeah.
And then of course Patrick now is coming to the business, and he's been traveling with us. As we build these new exhibits and things, and we're doing stuff for the State Fair of Texas, the Houston Rodeo, the Fiesta Bowl Parade in Phoenix, and like I said before, Mexico City, Six Flags Parade. We have parades that are running in China, Korea, Japan.
And I have to say, we're going to have LSU Mike the Tiger in a parade coming up with Coach Kiffin, right?
Yeah, Coach Kiffin is going to be
That's great.
riding Mike the Tiger, which was another idea. My son Fitz and Patrick, but Fitz came up with this idea. He's like, Dad, we need to build a giant tiger. And I'm like, well, man, go for it, son. Let's do it. And literally, we did it. And of course, it's if you see the reactions, because it leads the Tiger Walk at the LSU games, but it went up, of course, to Omaha,
Right. For
with the baseball team,
championship.
and it creates a lot of excitement.
Yeah, that's terrific.
In only a way that Louisiana can celebrate too.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing that. I know the parade goers are going to be thrilled when they see the parade in Endymion that night with Coach Kiffin. All right. So on the show, we have the official New Orleans questionnaire, and I'd like to give you the opportunity to participate in that.
Okay.
You ready to go?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to give you some questions. You can answer it 1, 2 words, and we'll keep moving. What is the best poor boy?
Dom Elise's, although I go to Dom Elise's far less than I'd like to go, but it's a little harder to keep the pounds off these days. Dom Elise's, if you're in New Orleans, and if you happen to be in Metairie, there's a place called Radasta's. It's really great too.
What is it? Is it a roast beef? Is it a seafood?
Oh, I think. Well, it's shrimp.
Shrimp, oh boy.
Yeah, shrimp or oyster.
Dressed?
Particularly this time of year, totally dressed.
All right.
Absolutely.
You have an opportunity to see one New Orleans musical artist, just one, dead or alive, in concert. Who would it be and where would it be?
It's going to be the guy that literally the most famous person ever from New Orleans, Louis Armstrong. Never been anybody more famous. In fact, he was known around the world. And in fact, if you ever just do a little research on Louis Armstrong. In fact, I'm working on something right now, a Louis Armstrong statue that we're going to put out at New Orleans Airport that Kern Studios is donating to the airport, because I get out to Louis Armstrong Airport. I'm in the airport all the time, and I'm like, damn, we need a Louis Armstrong in here. I mean, how do we have the airport and not have the guy himself?
That's going to be a great
Louis
gift.
Armstrong,
That's
I
terrific.
think he would.
And where would you want to see him play?
Oh, hell, where do you think I'd want to see him? At Mardi Gras World, live in Mardi Gras World, for one of our events, I think would be great.
All right, your favorite New Orleans smell? The favorite.
So it's really, and obviously New Orleans is a town that has lots of smells, but there's two things that you can smell in New Orleans, and I smelled it this past weekend. Bread, baking, which is always great, and then also when you go out, you can smell them, the coffee beans.
Oh, when you cross the high rise there?
Yeah. You can smell the coffee beans, which I think is really, really, and obviously New Orleans history with coffee and the great bread we have.
This is a silly question to ask you, but I'm going to ask it. Mardi Gras or Jazz Fest?
Well, so Mardi Gras, I think, is certainly, there's a lot of people that Mardi Gras, like I said, has been being copied all over. I enjoy Mardi Gras a lot. When I'm in the middle of it, it's obviously a lot of work. It's a lot of logistics. But Jazz Fest, I have a lot of friends that come in for Mardi Gras and clients. I've got people that come, the guys that run entertainment at Disney and Universal that come in for Mardi Gras and Jazz Fest. And I'm not talking just a little bit. I'm talking they'll come in every year.
Yeah.
And, to get those guys on a level like that want to return to this city is really pretty remarkable when you think about it.
All right, Mount Rushmore. If you did a Mardi Gras Mount Rushmore, who would be on that mountain?
Wow. So I think I would have to start with, the very beginning, Comus, because there's a lot of people say Mobile, whether it was Mobile or New Orleans. New Orleans was the first Mardi Gras parade. Okay, they were celebrating New Year's Eve.
And Comus was the first Mardi Gras parade.
Comus, obviously, I think, Rex, the Day King. I think from my perspective, you'd have to have Darwin Finner, who was a very, 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 very smart and apparently just prescient. He really could see what Mardi Gras needed and what New Orleans needed. He took Blaine under his wing. Obviously, I think that Blaine is on the Mount Rushmore I don't think anybody's made more of an impact on Carnival, certainly in the 20th century, than he has. I think obviously the Brennans with Bacchus, I think, was super important. Ed Munez with Endymion. Frankly, Muses, Stacy Rosenberg and Virginia Saucy with bringing the female crews. It's hard to just point out there's so many of them now. And today, I mean, you got Cleopatra and Iris that are over 3,000 members.
Right.
I mean,
And you mentioned
Colleen Johnson and
you mentioned Louis Armstrong
Kristen
earlier when
Danforth.
he was king of Zulu.
Well,
you
and
would
that's
think, I see that photo of him riding on that float, and I'm thinking,
Louis
iconic.
Armstrong in 1949, they made him King Zulu, and that was picked up. He was on the cover of Time magazine, and it was covered all over the world.
Yeah.
And it brought attention to Mardi Gras, and that's why when Blaine and Pip and Dick Brennan got together when they first formed Bacchus, they decided to have a celebrity king. And they decided to call it Bacchus because Bacchus actually predated even the crew.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to gumbo. Chicken or seafood?
Chicken. That's
Okay.
easy.
Your favorite New Orleans movie or TV series?
I'm going to bring this just for everybody can think about this. There's a movie. It was a terrible movie, but it's Paul Newman was the actor. Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward called The Drowning Pool. And in that movie, Joanne Woodward, Paul Newman's brother is Blaine, and Paul Newman is a detective and finds Blaine's card, and he picks it up and it says, Blaine Kern artist, and he ends up in Algiers at the den where Joanne Woodward is an artist working on a float in that movie. And Blaine used to always brag that when he was a young man going out to Las Vegas, that that they were dating these showgirls, and that he knew Joanne Woodward. And of course, nobody ever believed him until she showed up with her husband, and they made a movie in the 70s in New Orleans.
All right, neutral ground or sidewalk side?
I think I like the sidewalk side. And I think about it because when I ride in the parades, I ride in the front of every parade that we do. I like the neutral ground because the lights are on the neutral ground, so I can see the people a little bit better on St. Charles Avenue. But if I was on the parade, if I was watching a parade, I'd be on the sidewalk side because I want to be able to get out and get where I need to go afterwards.
Very good. Your earliest memory of visiting the French Quarter?
With my mother, I remember she brought me to a parade, and I remember the flambeaux, and I remember the parade going through the French Quarter. And so I must have been, that in 69 or 70 was the last year, so I was probably, 6, 7, 8 years old.
And speaking of flambeaux, those were used back in the early days when there were no lights on the floats, right? And it would illuminate the floats.
The idea was to illuminate the floats. Exactly.
All right, dead or alive, who is the one person you'd like to take to lunch, and where would you take them?
I'd have to go back to Louis Armstrong, and I guess I want him to let me. I'd let him tell me where he wanted to go. I'm sure we'd end up somewhere down in the Treme, or near Congo Square, somewhere down there.
Yeah.
Eating a great New Orleans.
That's beautiful.
Maybe we'd be at Little Dizzy's or something.
I'd like to be a fly on the wall.
Little
for that.
Dizzy's, probably.
Little Dizzy's.
We'd probably end up at Little Dizzy's.
On Esplanade, yeah.
Yep.
What is your favorite New Orleans song? Either a song by a New Orleans artist or a song about New Orleans.
This is a song I play every year, and I'm not really a big music guy. I enjoy music, but I'm not like one of these guys that goes to concerts and has a big collection or anything. But I do play this song every year on Mardi Gras morning called, the Soul Rebels now, Do What You Wanna. Because if there's ever a day that everybody does what they want to,
That's right.
it's Mardi Gras Day.
What is the one New Orleans food item you can't live without?
Red beans and rice. I will have to have my red beans and rice every Monday, or if I don't get it Monday, I'm getting it at least once a week.
You're going to find it.
I'm going to find it.
Favorite place to get
and my
it?
wife knows it. Oh, at home.
At home. All right.
Yep.
You've been out of town for a month. You fly back into the airport in New Orleans at Louis Armstrong International. You hop in an Uber and decide to have a drink. Where are you going to go, and what are you going to have?
So first of all, I'm not a big, as much as my business is going out all the time, I'm not out a lot. But I think if I was going out, normally when I go straight home from the airport, but if I'm the tourist coming into town, I think I'd go to the Carousel Bar. That is a lot of fun, and I like that whole bar area that they've got set up over there at the Mont
That's
Leon.
great. Mont Leon Hotel.
Live music, I think it's a lot of fun, yeah.
All right, our final question. In 5 words or less, why do you love New Orleans?
It's 4 words. It's a real place.
That's
It
beautiful.
really is. I mean, there's no other place like it on earth. And I think that's the reason why we have so much going for us. I think that it's being a real place. there's a value to that AI and no one can recreate.
That's great. And you're a real treasure, and so is your family. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, well, I love the Romigs. I feel like I've known you my whole life. I certainly knew your father since I was maybe a tot.
Well, my mom knew you were coming on the show, so she wanted me to give you her love as well.
Well, I love your mom. She's wonderful.
All right,
Amazing
Barry.
woman.
Thanks, man.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.